Well, we've come a long way this week, from travelling players visiting Stratford-upon-Avon to the establishment of fixed playhouses and the theatrical profession in London, to command performances before the royal court, whether in the reality of Queen Elizabeth or the fiction of the court of Duke Theseus in Midsummer Night's Dream. We've seen what the playhouses were like, how people paid to get in, and how plays were rehearsed and put on. And we've seen that intimate relationship between actor and audience. But for us to know about the plays, they have to survive. That book, which contained the complete script of the play, was held backstage, has not survived. Theatre is an ever-changing art, and theatre buildings don't survive. There was a terrible fire at the Globe in 1613, and even after the restoration of the theatres in the later 17th century, where many of the plays were handed down in manuscript, there were further fires in the 18th and 19th centuries. So the original scripts from Shakespeare's Playhouse do not survive. But fortunately, nearly all his plays appeared in print. This itself is a mark of their popularity. His plays began to be printed pretty soon after his theatrical career began. Half of them were published during his lifetime in little pocket editions. They were known as quartos because the paper was folded 4 times over, and they could be obtained very cheaply at the bookstalls in the yard of St. Paul's Cathedral. Half of them, though, remained in the prompter's manuscript until after Shakespeare's death, when his fellow actors, John Hemmings, Henry Condell, gathered them together and published the so-called first folio of the complete plays. Well, almost complete plays. There's 36 of them. 1 or 2 others didn't quite make the cut. The folio was a large and expensive volume, single sheet of paper, very elaborately produced volume, very expensive as well. Now, what's fascinating from the point of view of the process of putting on a play, which has been our subject this week, is that in some cases, the text printed in the folio and that printed in the quarto is different. Now, the reason for that is precisely that plays change as they are restaged. Even in the process going from rehearsal to first performance, plays undergo changes. And certainly when a play is revived in a later season, maybe the company personnel will have changed, maybe the dramatist will have had new ideas. So in the case of those Shakespeare plays, where we have both a quarto and a folio, sometimes you can see intriguing differences. And I've got a really good example here from A Midsummer Night's Dream. We talked about the final scene of the play, where the court gathers together and Duke Theseus invites a listing of all the potential performances that are to be put on. Now, the obvious person to provide a list of what entertainments are available to the court is the master of the revels, the manager of mirth, as Theseus calls him, the character in charge of court entertainment. It's a character called Philostrati. We've seen him at the very, very beginning of the play. And indeed, in the quarto, the little edition published in 1600, just a few years after the play was written, published in Shakespeare's lifetime, we get the stage direction, enter Theseus, Hippolyta, and Philostrati. And then when Theseus says, what entertainment shall we have to while away the 3 hours? What revels are in hand? Call Philostrati, he says. And Philostrati answers, here, mighty Theseus. And then it's Philostrati who goes through listing all the potential performances, including Pyramus and Thisbe. But when the folio came to be published in 1623, after Shakespeare's death, Philostrati has disappeared. The final act there, Actus Quintus it's called, Latin 5th act, begins, enter Theseus, Hippolyta, Aegeus and his lords. And when Theseus says, where is our usual manager of mirth? Philostrati is not there. The text changes to call Aegeus. Aegeus, a senior courtier, father of one of the lovers. He replies, and he then actually hands out the list of potential subjects for performance to Lysander, one of the other lovers. It's an intriguing little change. We don't know why Shakespeare made it, whether there was some reason in terms of the availability of actors to double small roles that meant he couldn't bring Philostrate back on stage, or whether he had the idea that reconciling Aegeus with Lysander in this moment was a neat little linking of the play within the play sequence and the lovers sequence. Who knows why it happened, but it's a lovely example of how plays are not stable things, how they change. Here is the Quarto, published in Shakespeare's lifetime, and then the folio published by his fellow actors, with just these subtle differences that reveal what an extraordinarily uncertain process theatre is. It's one of the things that makes drama so exciting, the fact that you never know quite what's going to happen next. You constantly have to improvise.